Hi, everyone. Um, Hi, everyone. Sorry about that. This is the Senate confirmation hearing for Kevin Warsh, the village idiot Donald Trump's nominee for Fed chair. Oh, no sound. Hang on, guys. Sorry about that.
Reserve officials have said that this
Sorry about
excess
that,
is
guys. Here's the
due
sound.
to tariffs. Do you agree with that?
Senator, I don't. If I can make 2
Please.
points, much as we discussed in your office, I think the data that's being used to judge inflation is quite imperfect data. And among the projects that the economics profession, and if I'm confirmed as chairman of the Fed needs to do, is to try to use our new understanding and new data sources to see what's really the inflation rate in the economy. We used to use core PCE, core measures, so we'd exclude food and energy because it was sort of a rough swag as to what was going on. We don't have to do a rough swag anymore. What I'm most interested in is what's the underlying inflation rate, not what's the one-time change in prices because of a change in geopolitics or a change in beef, but what's the underlying generalized change in prices in the economy. And my broad sense is that these inflation risks and the inflation damage the last several years is improving somewhat. It has improved somewhat in the last year. The measures I prefer are looking at things that are called trimmed averages, where we take out all of the tail risks, all of the one-off items, and we ask ourselves whether the generalized change in prices is having second-order effects on the economy. Again, they're not where they should be, but I think that the trend is quite favorable.
And these trend averages and the data that you're looking at now, it's not traditionally the norm that economists would use in this position. Is that correct?
Some in the economics profession are increasingly looking to these median type measures, but among the projects I would hope to undertake as one of the first reforms at the Fed is a data project where we would go off and we would evaluate with the public sector and the private sector, including the Bureau of Labor Statistics, a survey of 1 billion prices. And what I'm really most interested, Senator, is what's the change of that 500 millionth and one price? Because that's
All right, if you're just joining us, right now, I just wanted to stop the video for a second. We are watching just a little bit because this is going to get dull and boring, but I just thought it was worth checking out for a few moments. This is Kevin Warsh. Kevin Warsh is the village idiot Donald Trump's nominee to be the Fed chair. He's, we can see, I haven't really seen him live at all yet. I've been reading news stories about him, but I don't know anything about him, to be honest with you. He appears to be relatively soft-spoken. He doesn't appear to be an idiot, but, that changes once you're in the Trump administration. You have to, even if you're not an idiot, you have to pretend to be one to survive in there. So, when he gets confirmed, and I say when because there's no chance the Republicans aren't going to confirm anybody that Donald Trump pushes forward. Quite frankly, there's no chance. I mean, the confirmation hearings are almost a joke. In the sense that whoever the idiot puts forward, the cowards, the chicken shit GOP senators are going to confirm hook, line, and sinker. But we still have to go through this process because if we have a democracy after this imbecile is out of office, it will be necessary to do this again properly when a new president, a Democratic president, who isn't a wannabe authoritarian lunatic, is bringing forth cabinet members, and we get back to the business of actually running a country and not running a fucking idiocracy, an idiotic autocracy. From what I'm hearing right now, it sounds like Warsh, and again, I've just been listening to a little bit of it, and I've only read a little bit of reporting on it. It sounds like Warsh is using calm intellectual speech to validate the idea that basically what he wants to do is redefine the way that the Fed assesses interest rates so that it can look like the village idiot Donald Trump is actually doing a good job lowering interest rates. And why I already call out stupidity on that, insult to our intelligence. This early on in this, early on in the sense it's that I just joined the press conference. Why I call stupidity on that is, it denies the basic reality of what we're experiencing, right? We don't need the Bureau of Labor Statistics to tell us, or the Fed to tell us, that inflation is high. We go grocery shopping and we see that inflation is high. It doesn't matter to us that it's 4% or 2% or 4.4%. We're in for, and we're heading up exponentially as the price of gas will continue to increase if this stupid fucking war continues. We'll talk about that in a moment after we just listen in for a little bit to this Fed chair's hearing. But we need to validate. We even though we know, because we go to the supermarket and we spend more money, right? We buy stuff from Amazon and it costs a little more, right? We know we're experiencing inflation, but we need a Federal Reserve, as we've had under the leadership of Jerome Powell, that validates the experience we're having, because that's what you have in a democracy. In an autocracy, you have a Federal Reserve that tries to convince you that you're crazy, that tries to convince you that what you're experiencing when you go to the supermarket and you try to buy shit that is incredibly overpriced, that it's not really the case. The fact that you can't afford it is just you misinterpreting the data. It's you misinterpreting reality. It's not that inflation is going up, it's that you're too dumb to know any better. And we, the state, know best. And it sounds to me, with a calm voice, which is all this idiot needs to get confirmed. I shouldn't say idiot, which is all this person, Kevin Warsh, needs to get himself confirmed by these Republican cowards. With a calm voice, he's telling us that, you know what, we're going to do this. You know, we're going to find a better way to assess the numbers than has been going on for generations now. And once we find that better way, we're going to spend time. We're going to validate that inflation is really not there. Trump is really right. So now let's continue listening in.
Inflation. That's a change in the generalized level. In a market economy, prices change all the time, and I don't want to be confused by that. I want to know what inflation really is, and I still think there's some work to do.
And I respect, listen, I'm listening to you today and talking with you. I respect you truly believe as an economist and a theorist in this theory, in what you are talking to us today about, which is traditionally not the norm. And many are disagreeing with you on that, and publicly disagreeing. And so I understand that. But I guess the position I have is, I hope you're right. But at the end of the day, my concern is people are suffering right now with high costs, and we need to address it. And I don't know how long it's going to take for your economic theory to gain traction or to be proven that it's going to benefit so many people in this country right now. And here's one other thing, because I don't have that much time, and this is what is also a concern of mine, so I want you to address it. Earlier, you've been on the Federal Reserve Board, and you were there during the financial crisis of 2008. You and I talked about this. I was the Attorney General then. It hit Nevada so hard. Here's what I do know, and at that time, in 2006, you attended numerous meetings where housing experts pleaded with you to stop predatory mortgages. In fact, Gail Burks, who was the CEO of Nevada's Fair Housing at that time, who I worked with, repeatedly warned Fed leadership, including you, about predatory lending practices such as flipping loans or misinforming seniors about reverse mortgages. And in 2007, you said, and I quote, "Subprime mortgages have gotten a bad name in this environment, and in some cases, that's not just." You also said that you don't see any immediate systemic risk issues among big banks. And you said that at that time. And then just recently, and this is what I want you to address, Senator Warren has said that you told her you had no regrets during this tenure. How can we trust that your economic theory, when you were wrong then, is going to be the accurate theory we need now to help so many families and businesses that are struggling with the policies that we're dealing with now?
Senator, let me address a few things. The chairman is going to cut me off when he must, but I would say this. For many years before the global financial crisis, I warned about the very real risks of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac blowing up, which they did. I think that part of the housing market was vulnerable for many years, and not enough was done about it, even in spite of my protestations and my urging about GSE reform. It wasn't done. I think that compounded the financial crisis. Secondly, I think subprime mortgages then, subprime assets then, were indicative of prices of almost every financial asset that were mispriced. What I suggested then and what I believe now is that subprime mortgages were just indicative of a set of prices that were incorrect, and they all repriced. Just to give one fine example before I turn to the chairman.
Perhaps no examples right now.
Okay, sir.
Let's go to Senator
Thank you.
Haggerty. I want to give you the opportunity to finish that exchange.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Mr. Warsh, I want to welcome you, Jane, and your family. And I want the committee to know that I've known Kevin Warsh for 30 years. We first crossed paths back in 1990.
I don't care what Haggerty has to say. I really don't. He's another ass-kissing Trumpian senator. He is not, I don't imagine you're going to get any sort of pushback from him. And, I just don't care. It's, to be honest, I wish there was a nicer way to say it. I just don't give a shit. I am watching the hearing to see how, senators, U.S. senators effectively, how they question him, Democratic senators, how they question him effectively on that issue, which I didn't know about, but now I do. I didn't know where he stood on the 2008 financial crisis. How he responds to his perceptions that basically AI is no problem, and somehow, allowing these massive AI companies to just do whatever the fuck they want, whenever the fuck they want, however the fuck they want. How that he has a belief that the AI, not only are we not in a potential AI bubble, but that AI will in and of itself lower interest rates, if I understand his position correctly, and it makes no sense to me. But I'm not an economist, so maybe that's why it makes no sense to me. And most importantly, his independence from the validity of Donald Trump. He's already, unfortunately, we missed Senator Warren's. They were referring. I didn't see it either, but in the questioning, they were referring to Senator Warren's questioning of him, where basically she, told him to his face after she, hammered him about his ridiculous positions on AI. She basically told him to his face that she expects that he'll be a Trump, ass-kissing lackey, at which time, if you saw us in the beginning when Senator Kennedy, actually, I don't think I was live yet when Senator Kennedy, right before I came on live, when I was prepping for it and I had this up, Republican Senator Kennedy of Louisiana was interviewing him and, asked him to clarify his answer based on Senator Warren's question of basically, are you going to become Trump's ass-kissing lackey? Whatever he tells you to do, are you going to do? He argued that he would not, that he would be thoroughly independent. That's not possible, right? I mean, maybe he's the last person left in the U.S. government, in the political world, who is dumb enough to think you can go into the Trump administration and just not do what he orders you to do. But he will be fired, fairly quickly. Although there is a lot of questions whether or not you can fire a Fed chair once you nominate one. So I don't know. I don't know. I am, but I want to see how Democrats, at least for just a couple more minutes. I'm not gonna. We'll listen to. I'll turn it back on in a second, and we'll hear him answering Haggerty's questions. I don't know what Democrat is up next, and then we'll kind of bail, and then maybe listen to see who the next Democrat is, and if they're asking forceful questions, and then at that point maybe we'll bail and move on to other things, because I know this stuff can get kind of dry and painful. But my full expectation is, if and when this guy is confirmed, he will just immediately crush interest rates with no idea of what the repercussions are based on his philosophy and based on the fact that the village idiot Donald Trump absolutely wants him to do it, even though Donald Trump has no idea what the fuck interest rates do or how they work. And Donald just wants them to because he thinks it's going to make him look better, because he thinks inflation's just going to magically go down, whether he goes to war, whether he keeps up these stupid tariffs or whatever other inflationary action the village idiot engages in. The expectation is that the idiot, who is a simple person who can only understand simple things, is just certain that if his law is followed, his rule is followed, his order is followed, and the Fed just slashes interest rates down as low as possible, that somehow magically inflation will go away, and literally the opposite could happen. So we'll see what happens. So I just I've talked a lot about potential economic calamity. Hell, I see that as a real possibility. Sometimes it feels like more of a probability than a possibility. Right now, feels more like a possibility heading to probability, depending on what happens with Iran and oil. And there's a whole discussion now about the United Arab Emirates maybe switching from the petrodollar. The petrodollar is the idea that the oil commodities are traded based on the U.S. dollar. And because the U.S. dollar is becoming so devalued, and the UAE is actually worried about running out of access to U.S. dollars because of the war, they're thinking of paying for their oil or selling their oil or trading their oil on the commodities markets in the Chinese yuan, which is the Chinese currency. And that would be the beginning of the end of the dominance of the US dollar. And that also could be the beginning of what I perceive to be total economic calamity, because if our dollar goes down to shit and people start, international investors and governments stop investing in U.S. treasuries, aka the dollar, because it's worthless or heading toward worthless, let's hear the Democrat.
Good morning, Mr. Warsh. It's still morning. Let me start with this. I think you have said that you have confidence that this economy has potential. I think that's fair to say. And you've also said that this is a time of great consequence for the nation's economy, perhaps one of the most significant hinge points in a couple of generations. That's fair to say?
Yes, Senator.
Thank you. And so I agree with that. And I actually want to go a bit further, because I think that it seems to me that this economy is amazing for rich people who have a lot of capital. And in fact, we can see in 2025, billionaire wealth grew 3 times faster than the average rate of the previous 5 years. And wealthy households hold a massive portion of the nation's wealth. And this, I think, is the tipping point that our economy actually faces right now. And I can tell you that in Minnesota, a lot of people are telling me that it is harder and harder for them to afford the basics. They aren't rich. They don't have enough money to pay their bills, to pay their doctor's bills. So I want to look at this with you for a few minutes, and I want to start with inflation. So last week, President Trump said that gas prices are, quote, not very high, and, quote, we're having some fake inflation because of the fuel. So understanding what you've been saying about data and measurement and all of that, let me just ask you, do you think that gas prices going up 20% is fake inflation?
Senator, the gas prices, like beef prices, eggs, milk, and the rest, they move, and when they move in the wrong direction, American people are hurting by it. There's no question about it.
That's right. American people feel it. It's not fake to them. It's money that they don't have in their pocket because gas is up 20%. I think my constituents would say that inflation is real and not fake. Okay, so let's look at unemployment. At the State of the Union, the president said, quote, the roaring economy, excuse me, this is the quote, the roaring economy is roaring like never before. So do you agree with that statement? Is that how you see the economy, that is roaring like never roaring before?
So Senator, if I can clarify 2 things. One, there's a difference between the change in prices and inflation. The change in prices happen in a market economy. When inflation moves up, that's because the Fed had something to do with it. Now, on the state of the economy, I would say that the broad contours of the economy are improving. The potential of the economy, the real results of the economy are improving, but I think it can improve more. And I think in the years ahead, I think the economy's potential is strengthening.
So, the reality is that the economic data, understanding what you're saying about economic data being not imperfect, that there was almost zero job growth in 2025. And so that looks to me like not a roaring economy. It looks like a weak economy, which is what my constituents are telling me back in Minnesota. Let me go to one last look at this. Around the country, the average cost of home insurance rose 12% last year. Now, in my home state of Minnesota, not a coastal state, premiums rose 34% in 2025. This is, of course, caused by extreme weather events, hail, floods, tornadoes, hurricanes, climate change. So is that inflationary, in your perspective? Is that increase in home insurance, property and casualty insurance, isn't that inflation?
So, Senator, if I can answer two questions that I think I heard, and we talked about both of these in your office. When we look at the payroll numbers every month and we ask ourselves whether it's good or bad, the job you gave to the Federal Reserve is to ensure we're at maximum sustainable employment. I think broadly speaking, the economy is running about close to full employment, though we never know what the right number is. So if Americans that want a job can find a job, then by the Fed's metric, we're at full employment. On the question of insurance premiums and the rest, when I look broadly across the economy, I would say when we look at health care, when we look at education, we look at housing, those prices have tended to go up more. In the less regulated parts of the economy, we've seen a downward structure, a downward change in prices, and we try to aggregate them the best we can.
But I'm not exactly sure what your point is there, but I would just say that my point here is that rising home insurance rates caused by increasing extreme weather events, climate change, is another inflationary pressure that people in my state are dealing with. And this, of course, the reason I'm focusing on this is because I'm worried that because of the pressure that you are going to be under from the president to lower interest rates, that this inflationary pressure that my constituents are feeling is going to get worse and not better. And so I don't have time to ask my last question, but it is literally this. The president has said that he demands that the next Fed chair will lower interest rates. And I take him at his word at that, and that is what causes me such grave concern here. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes, ma'am. Senator Lomas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome, Mr. Warsh, and congratulations.
Loomis is an ass kisser. She was a crypto queen for the longest time. When I was covering crypto for Cointelegraph years ago, when Senator Loomis wasn't, your classic chicken shit GOP senator, wannabe MAGO sociopath, when she was semi-normal, she was actually, a crypto queen back then. And as the corruption of crypto happened here in the United States through Donald Trump, it was already happening anyway, but it kicked in exponentially with his idiot sons and him and their crypto grift, which has brought them billions and billions of dollars, and maybe the idiot billions of dollars in bribes that are untraceable, at least at this point. Loomis has struck me. I mean, I'm just telling you this for the plethora of reasons. I don't give a shit what she has to say. Loomis has struck me as a once semi-principled champion of what she had told us was a new cutting-edge technology, and she's devolved into one of the administration's crypto queens of corruption. She reminds me of in the House, Congressman Tom Emmer. Emmer, who I once interviewed, one of his staff members for a crypto article that I was doing, and again, he was a principled. He was the chairman at the time of the Crypto Caucus in the House, and he was normal back then. He was a normal conservative Republican who had concerns about the crypto industry, but also was an advocate, was a champion of crypto. He's also, turned into he's part of the House leadership now, and he's sort of like the goofball crypto king of the House right now, and he's just such a pathetic version of MAGA. It's like he's such a weak, pathetic version of MAGA that it's hard to believe he's the same guy that I didn't interview him, but one of his staffers was accessible to me, and gave some great, really grounded interviews for an article that I was writing. But that was then, and this is now. So while she talks about bullshit, there were two things. Again, as this hearing goes on, I'm getting more certain that Warsh is a fucking nutcase. Not just at first I thought he might be like a Kevin Hassert, like an economist, but, a Trumpian economist who, is willing to lie with a calm demeanor and a straight face, although Hassert kind of smiles always like Hassert looks like he's about to go postal at any given moment, as he goes on cable news and just talks about, the price of eggs, the price of something just went up, whether it be steel or the price of oil. I'm just making this up. This price of oil just went up, and Cass will be like, very calm, and he's always smiling, and he'll be like, the price of oil didn't really go up. It just looks like it went up, and it really didn't go up. It's actually down. You're just thinking that it's up, but it's down. He's kind of like an actual, if you've seen Hassert, he literally is an actual clown. In the grand scheme of what clowns look like. But, and he's nuts. He's just nuts, right? And I'm getting the impression that Warsh is too. There were two things Warsh said. Sorry, Kevin, I called you Warsh. Warsh said that in his perspective, just defying reality, right? Right now, from his perspective, when Senator Smith asked about employment, he's like, well, right now we're at full employment. That's how I would assess it. We're in a situation now. If you want a job, you can find a job. And was it me, or did he say that? If you want a job, you can find a job. And therefore we're at full employment right now. So instead of saying that we're at, what are we at? 4.4% unemployment. Last time I checked, which was months ago, it's probably far worse, but black unemployment, which is also always an indicator of the unemployment, the overall where unemployment was going, was at like 7 or 8%. It's probably up. I wouldn't even be surprised if it's up to 10% now. There multiple credible economists who aren't Trump crazy have basically said we are in a jobs recession now. There are no jobs, and yes. There is a sign. I'm trying to think of where I just saw this. There was a sign at Target that they were hiring, my local Target, for a while, and that's great. And then I just saw a sign somewhere else, for like a place like that was hiring, and for low-paying shit jobs that you can't support a family on, it is not impossible that, let's hear Senator Warnock. He's better to listen to than me.
Confirmed, you will serve as chair of one of the most powerful economic institutions in the world. Decisions you make would move markets, affect Americans' retirement savings and ability to buy homes. It would influence the global economy. You currently serve as a lecturer at Stanford University. If Professor Warsh were to assign a letter grade to the American economy today for the average working family, what grade would you assign?
Senator, it was good to meet with you in your office. In modern academic institutions, they give everybody A's, so it's not a fair comparison. Especially at elite universities, I know everyone gets perfect grades.
Well, what grade would you
That's
give
so funny.
the economy?
Well, if I gave a student anything other than an A, the dean would summon me to his office because I would have hurt his self-image.
The Americans, particularly in the state of Georgia, who haven't had the benefit of attending some of these elite institutions, are trying to make their lives work. They're sitting around their kitchen tables trying to figure out how to put their kids through school. And regardless of how the markets are doing, consumer confidence is at a record low. So that's their grade on the economy. Working families are struggling, and things are getting worse. The inflation rate has remained elevated above the Fed's 2% target rate throughout President Trump's term, despite his promise to lower inflation. The president's war in Iran has spiked energy prices by 11%, and Americans are paying on average near $4 a gallon for gas because of the war. We've lost nearly 90,000 manufacturing jobs since President Trump took office. He promised us a manufacturing boom. We've lost 90,000 manufacturing jobs. And Americans already dealing with high prices paid $1,000 more per household in 2025 as a direct result of President Trump's illegal tariffs, which he remains committed to in spite of the Supreme Court decision. He does even better than this practice of, these institutions. When asked what grade he would give the economy, he said an A, and then he thought about it and said, no, actually A+++. And as I thought about his answer, I was wondering who was he talking about? Who is it an A+ for? Certainly not the ordinary working class Georgians that I'm fighting for every single day. Maybe the people closest to him. But I'm hard pressed to think that folks across the state of Georgia who are looking at their grocery bill, looking at their gas bill, looking at the $1,000 that they've had to pay would give the economy an A++. What are your thoughts?
Senator, thank you. If the Fed were to execute on a series of policy reforms, then I believe the economy can be stronger. I believe inflation can be lower, and I believe real take-home pay can be higher. I think the Fed is not blameless for the divergence you described between those that have financial assets and those that don't. Had the balance sheet not been brought from the $800 billion level when I showed up at the Fed in 2006 to an order of magnitude higher, if the Fed had kept a smaller balance sheet, the way the Senator I just talked about a few moments ago, I think interest rates could be lower, inflation could be better, and the economy could be stronger.
Yeah, you discussed your theory of the case with me in that regard. But I think you would agree that the recognition, I think implicit in your testimony is the recognition that this is not a A++ economy. In your economy, in your testimony, you note the importance of price stability and correctly note that inflation means people lose purchasing power, particularly harming low-income folks. But I also noticed your testimony did not really discuss the Fed's other mandate, and that's to maximize employment. Inflation is critically important, but if you don't have a job, you're in trouble. Do you view the Fed's mandate for maximizing employment as equally important to its price stability mandate, and are you concerned about weak job growth numbers?
Before the nominee answers the question, the senator from the elite university, Morehouse, is out of time. So I appreciate the question, but we will have the answer submitted for the record.
I know you wanted to attend Morehouse College. I'm sorry.
Everybody wants to attend Morehouse, by the way, but I am a Charleston Southern Buck.
I appreciate
Very happy about that. He couldn't get into Charleston Southern, but
Whatever. I think Senator Warnock made some fair points. I don't think he really, there might be a certain frustration watching this hearing because this guy isn't being hammered. Warsh isn't being hammered, but I understand why the senators are doing what they're doing. There's no point in trying to hammer him. He hasn't had a job there yet, and he's going to be confirmed anyway. So hammering him over the head with, I think what I think they're doing effectively is they're effectively just making the point that Trump is an economic disaster. He's a rolling, explosive economic fiasco. He's leading the country toward economic collapse in some capacity, and he owns it. And as we move toward the midterms, the Republicans own it. Election after election has been indicative of that. My expectation is the election today in Virginia, even though it looks like it's going to be really close. Every really close election has turned out not to be really close. We'll see what happens. This is the election for redistricting in Virginia. My expectation is Virginia will speak up as well today, and it will be indicative. I mean, we'll see. Again, I don't know. But it'll be indicative of how everyone thinks about Trump's economy. And I think what the Democrats are effectively doing, they could always do a better job, but at least the ones I've listened to so far, I think what they're effectively doing is basically saying, this is on you. This economy, if Kevin Warsh will be, when he's confirmed, when he lowers interest rates right off the bat because Trump tells him to, when that negatively affects the economy, when interest rates goes up, when his fucking harebrained economic policy that has never been implemented because it probably is just some crazy, just extremist bullshit in terms of economic thinking, when that goes off the rails, you guys own it. You guys own it, and we're setting that up now, and I think they're doing an effective job. Just before Senator Warnock came on, though, I was talking about how Warsh had mentioned if, based on his analysis, if he was the Fed chair now, he would make the argument that we have full employment, even though the data doesn't show that. So it's clear that when he becomes the Fed chair, if there's anything he can do to fake data that shows full employment, because that's what he believes is going to be the case, he'll come up with new systems to the extent that he can, and I don't know how much he can. He'll come up with new systems to make that assessment, new ways to review the data and the metrics. And the second thing he said that I caught that was interesting underneath that smooth, calm veneer of his that seems batshit crazy to me, is he made them when he was asked by Senator Smith. Asked about inflation and how natural disasters and climate change are basically inflationary. Basically, she was hinting that something needs to be done about about climate change because it costs fucking money and it costs us more money. He basically said, well, the least regulated part of the economy, there is a downturn in inflation. So he's obviously one of these anti-regulation extremists, even though that answer had nothing to do with what she was talking about. There is I've been trying to rack my brain to think of what he might be referring to. There is no least regulated part of the economy that I can think of. I wish Senator Smith, that she didn't have time, and I don't know that she would have been interested to do this anyway, but I wish she would have followed up on that question. What is he talking about? What is the least regulated part of the economy where there is downward inflation? Is that AI? Because that's the least regulated part of the economy. Right now, these 7 AI companies and affiliates that are working with them that are making trillion-dollar circular deals represent 50% of our GDP right now, 50% of the entire output of the United States economy. If we have a GDP at 4% or whatever it is, 2% of that growth is 7 fucking companies, right? So if he's talking about AI, which he clearly has an economic hard-on for, then how can we know if AI at this point is inflationary or not? I mean, it makes no sense. Am I paying too much for my Chat GPT or I use Opus Clips to clip out it is Opus Clips is crazy fucking expensive, but it's, is the Department of Defense overpaying for its Anthropic AI that it was using until Trump got mad at Anthropic because they took a stand for decency, but they're still using it even though they blackballed them from all government agencies and took ChatGPT. But is the Department of Defense, are they paying too high an inflation rate for their or too low an inflation rate for their AI? I don't know what the fuck he's talking about. But it strikes me as crazy. Let's see who's speaking now. And this, I promise, will be the last one. Andy
Gas,
Kim, my senator.
groceries, the bills. 60% of Americans say that they cannot handle a $1,000 emergency. 40% of Americans saying that they can't handle a $400 emergency. I wanted to ask, do you agree that the American families are struggling right now with affordability?
Senator, as we discussed in your office, central bankers should not be second-guessing what people feel and see in their own lives. People's lived experiences matter to them. What I can say is the central bank has some responsibility for the things that you've described, and that the legacy of inflation, what I think is the biggest economic policy error in 40 or 50 years, happened just a few years ago, and we're still living with the remnants of it. I think inflation is less problematic than it was a couple of years ago, but I would not.
But the
try to-
problem
I
of
would not try to
affordability
say-
continues, though. That sounds right, right?
I-
Because
I've got a lot of
I'll be
empathy
honest
for
with
that.
you, when I hear, I heard 2 months ago President Trump say, he said, quote, "What word have you not heard over the last 2 weeks? Affordability, because I've won. I've won affordability." It sounds like you would disagree with that assessment that the fight for affordability for American families is over.
So I think the trend is going in the right direction.
But we still have more work to do.
Well, the way I would describe it, Senator, is the cumulative increase in prices starting in early 2020 till now is between 25 and 35%. So I understand what hardworking Americans say. It's still a struggle. That's a legacy of a past policy error.
One thing that you talked about before is about just the real cost that families are facing right now, and I appreciate that you were pushing back on that comment that the president had about calling the energy prices and the fuel price increases that we're having fake inflation, because right now Americans have paid more than $8.4 billion more in gas during the first month of this war. Fertilizer, 70% of respondents to the Farm Bureau survey said that fertilizer is unable to be afforded right now, just given the price increases. Are you concerned that there could be real long-term effects of this war in Iran, especially if we're continuing to see these challenges when it comes to fuel and fertilizer?
Senator, if my reform agenda, if confirmed, stands for anything, it's for the central bank, especially the Fed chairman, to stay in its lane.
I know that, but you
So I
also
wouldn't
have
want
to
to wander outside of it. I'm happy.
But you're also charged with forecasting in terms of understanding where our economy is going. So does an impact of that magnitude rise to something that the Fed should keep an eye on and be concerned about?
The Fed should have an open mind towards all sorts of data, but the things that central banks can affect are things that are not one-off in nature, but are persistent and find their way into the generalized price level.
And that's
that
something
would be my focus.
I wanted to ask you about that, because you talked about a fundamental policy change when it comes to the Fed, and I guess I wanted to just get a little bit more clarity on that. Senator Lummis mentioned about the balance sheet and the concern you have about that. What level do you think the balance should be at? If it's $6.7 trillion now, where do you think the goal is in your mind?
So I haven't fixed a particular number, but any changes, Senator, in the balance sheet would be part of a public discussion, debated rigorously. And if and when the central bank comes to a judgment about a new balance sheet policy, which I hope the central bank would, it would be described well in advance. As I mentioned, it took 18 years to create this balance sheet problem, and we won't be able to fix it in 18 minutes. And so that's why I think deliberation here is important. But it suffices to say it should be smaller, and at least as important, it should not be holding long-term Treasury assets as if it's the fiscal authority. That's when it gets into politics.
I appreciate you saying that it's important to be able to have that public discussion. I mean, one thing that's come up as I've been engaged with different experts is concern about rapid reduction. If you are moving in that speed, that it could generate a number of concerns, including upward pressure on long-term interest rates. So I guess I just wanted to check, do you share that concern? As you are thinking about how to reduce it, do you also understand, though, that there are concerns about rapid reduction in the speed with which you're trying to go down?
Yes, Senator, and that kind of regime change would have to be deliberate, well orchestrated, well choreographed, and well described so that unnecessary upset are not done to financial markets as we go to a policy regime change much more focused on interest rates.
With that, I'll yield back.
Thank you, sir. Senator Ricketts.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Walsh. It was great to see you in my office. Thanks for coming by. I want to continue to talk.
Shut up, Senator Ricketts. I don't care what you have to say. I should, but I don't. I mean, Senator Kim was at least very strong. He didn't get railroaded by non-answers or by, answers he wasn't interested in because they weren't quite as relevant as he deemed them to be. He clearly made it clear that he understands what's going on. Which kind of puts somebody like a Fed chair on the on their back foot. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. I don't know. Anyway, let's just get to Iran for a couple of minutes before we wrap the live. As I had mentioned before, I'm trying to keep these lives a little bit shorter. And we're just about it. Let me just check some of the comments. Lacey, he's trying to blame others for inflation now. Legacy, my ass. Trump's tariffs and the war. 100%, Lacey. Absolutely. You're absolutely right. Gail says that's what they do. It's Obama. It's Hillary. It's Joe. Exactly. Gail, that's a nice. I'm just kind of just running through the chat real fast and just pulling out different things, different comments that folks might have made. Greed is good, right? Michael Douglas. Yeah, amen. I just wanted to read a couple of quick comments, guys. All right, and I just want to get to the next to the Iran stuff, and then we'll wrap the live for today. Thank you for joining me on this one, guys. I know these can be boring. I try to make them semi-entertaining by sticking my 2 cents in, as entertaining as that can be. But they are what they are. But I think it's important for us to at least know what's going on. I mean, the war is kind of taking center stage. Once things sort of die, if they ever dial down with the war, we'll get back to the Epstein stuff, unless the idiot invades Cuba. But when stuff like this happens and we can cover it together, I just think there's a value in doing that. Pakistani minister says Iran's response to talks is still awaited. Let me just check in. There's 8 updates here. Let me just see if any of them are updating that. EU agrees to widen sanctions. Iran's threat to completely close the strait. Blah blah blah. U.S. claims 28 vessels returned. Pakistan makes rare announcement. Pakistan's announcement is that it's still waiting. Okay. So here's what's happening with the ceasefire negotiations. If you haven't been paying attention, the Iranians are absolutely tormenting the village idiot Donald Trump. I think he is completely panicking. He came out, and I think it was a CNBC interview earlier today, and he talked about how, he's ready. The army, the military, the guns are ready to go. They're ready to start. They're going to start shooting any minute. It's going to be fabulous. They can't. I mean, it doesn't mean it isn't going to happen. But it will be incredibly destructive, whatever is left of this idiot's presidency, if the U.S. does start shooting again. And the imbecile usually knows that, although sometimes he doesn't know anything, so that can disappear at any given moment. He also talked about in that CNBC interview, and again, please fact check me. I'm not sure if it's CNBC. He also talked about how he was how the Iranians, they're gonna come, they have to come, they're gonna be there. He's talking about the ceasefire negotiations. Right now, the doofuses, which is J.D. Vance, the vice president, Jared Kushner, the dipshit son-in-law, and Steve Witkoff, the crooked lawyer, the crooked real estate lawyer. This is the dream team for the United States of America that's going to make a negotiating peace with the Iranians. They are in Islamabad now, waiting for the Iranians. Talk about the Iranians just having all of the fucking leverage, the strategy, and control. We have our U.S. officials sitting there in Islamabad now. The idiot's deadline looming for tomorrow, right? And he's supposed to go out and blow up all the bridges tomorrow. If there's no, we're going to blow, I'm not going to wait. And he, in his interview today, he also said something along the lines of, I'm not going to wait. No, I'm not going to extend the ceasefire. We're just going to go back. The military is ready to start shooting. They're going to start shooting. Right? So and these nincompoops are sitting there These unqualified, unfit for what they're doing nincompoops are sitting there waiting for the Iranians. And the Iranians are just sitting back, saying, no, maybe we'll show up, maybe not, but we're not gonna. And they are psychologically playing the village idiot for everything he's worth. They are driving him fucking nuts. This is when I talk about the reality. What I believe to be the reality is that any one of us, if we were given access to Donald Trump for the day, for the week, if you or me or anybody out there was given full unfettered access to Donald Trump for a week, we could manage and manipulate him. We could get him to do anything we wanted. We could get him to fucking start, pressuring Congress to pass climate change legislation. I would just start talking to him. Mr. President, sir, you look fantastic today. Mr. President, sir, what is that new cologne you're using? It really smells bold and strong. You are the strongest president I've ever known, and you are a fantastic president when it comes to climate, sir. Your climate change policy has been extraordinary. Now we need to put a cap on fossil fuels here in the United States. But I don't believe in fossil fuels. Yes, you do. You are amazing, and you won the 2020 election, sir. You were cheated out of that election, and sir, we need to put a limit on how much on fossil fuels. And I could manipulate him throughout the course of a week. Any one of us could do it if we were given unfettered access to him. And by the end of the week, that idiot would be doing whatever we want him to do. We would just be very calm, be very coordinated about it, be very intentional about it, and he's easily managed. And right now, the Iranians are doing a masterful job managing that fucking idiot because they are trying to drive him crazy. They're just not answering him. It's like, remember when you were younger? I certainly am guilty of doing this. Certainly when I was a teenager. When I was a teenager, sometimes I'd meet like a girl and I'd really like her and I'd think like this is going to work out or something, or maybe we'll go on it, maybe whatever. And I'd like, I didn't think it was appropriate when I was a young teenager to call a girl. So if we had a great conversation, I would give the girl my phone number. They never fucking called, by the way. And you would just wait. And you just wait, like it's, like a love-starved teenager, young. You just wait and wait and wait and wait, and the phone never fucking rings, right? And then when as a younger adult, and even as a child, I loved being an actor. I always loved acting and performing, and I would always audition for parts, and I just loved doing it. And it was just like the girl thing. I would just wait, just wait and wait and wait and wait for the phone to ring. It never fucking, once in a blue moon it would ring. And that's what's happening here. The idiot is just waiting. And when he doesn't get what he wants, when the Iranians just don't respond, he then tries to brush it off like he's fine anyway. Right. So like, I'm waiting for that girl to call. Right. And I usually kept it inside. But let's say I was talking to my friends. Right. I'm waiting for that girl to call. And I'm like, yeah, she's going to call me. Yeah, she's definitely going to call. Oh, yeah, she's going to call. And then she doesn't call. Right. And I'm like, well, if she doesn't call, man, she's in big trouble. Right. And that's Trump being like, we're going to blow everything up if they don't call. If they don't call me, if they don't love me, we're going to blow it up. We're going to do that if they don't call. That's me. And again, I never said a girl's in big trouble. I'm just using that for the analogy here. But then maybe I'd be like, after she still doesn't call and I realize I can't really do anything to get her in trouble for not calling. Well, I don't care if she calls. If she doesn't call anyway, it's going to be fine with me. I'll just go meet some other girl, right? The idiot is like, you know what, I don't care, because he said this in the CNBC interview, something along the line, I don't care if they don't need to make a deal. I don't care if they don't make a deal. If they don't make a deal, it's fine with me. We don't need to make a deal. We'll just start bombing. I don't need a deal. I don't want a deal. I'm not going to have a deal. And they're just sitting there quietly, not answering, making a fucking ass out of us. We were in a geopolitical embarrassment of epic proportions before today. And today, with these three fucking idiots sitting in Islamabad, waiting for the Iranians to come see them, to talk to them. Somebody bring JD a couch, right? Because he's going to need something after this, right? What the fuck is going on? What is going on? That's where everything is. That's the whole that's it. It's the idiot is waiting for the call, and the call isn't coming, and the idiot's getting upset about that, and he's threatening the people he's trying to call who aren't picking up the phone, and he's getting really upset about that. And then he's saying he doesn't really care if they don't call anyway, because he's fine. He's just going to go do something else. And that's the game we're in. I just want to see if there's another update. Lebanon raises Israel-Hezbollah war death to 2,454. And that's the sick fucking part of this all, right? That headline is the sick part of this egregious situation. Is that while Donald Trump plays, call me, please call me. If you don't call me, I'm going to be mad at you. If you don't call me, I'm going to blow you up. I don't care if you don't call me. Well, he plays baby games. While the idiot plays baby games, you know, in Lebanon alone, you're talking about 2,454 people. You're talking about nearly 3,000 people dead in Iran. You're talking about 13 U.S. service personnel, 13 military members dead. You're talking about, I don't even know what the numbers are in Qatar and the United Arab Emirates and Iraq, Saudi Arabia, people who may have been hit in different Iranian attacks on those locations. That's the sick part. While we have an idiot playing fucking baby games, and we have a jackass being semi-grilled on the House floor to give the idiot his fucking interest rate cuts. Thousands of people are dying because we elected this fucking moron. Virginia, if you're out there, if you're listening, Virginia, if you can hear me, you need to, this is why you're voting today, right, Virginia? If you just joined us, I'm throwing something in completely from left field, but it's a good thing to end the live on. Virginia is having an election today on the gerrymandering efforts, on the redistricting in Virginia. The polling seems to be, like all other polling lately, seems to be neck and neck. My expectation is the current pattern will continue of the anti-Trump pattern will continue as we've seen in election after election, and it won't even be close. We'll see what happens. I don't know Virginia politics. I can't even, if it was an election, I would venture a guess for an elected office, but who the hell knows? I don't know how this is going to turn out. My thought is, my expectation is, my hope is it turns out the way that we want it. But if you're listening, Virginia, and you're thinking of not voting, or you're thinking of voting on principle, we're not going to get involved in the low blows of gerrymandering. Get the fuck over it. Get your ass out there, Virginia, and fucking vote for this. Because you have 2,500 people here. You have 3,000, that's 5,500. 5,530, I'm just rough, I'm just, giving you these rough numbers. 5,513, including our service people. You have, we don't even know how many more people in the region who've been killed. That doesn't include the Israelis. You probably have in the low hundred of the Israelis because of this idiot, Vote today, Virginia. Vote. Vote for sanity, decency, normalcy. Vote to keep people alive. I think that's a good spot to wrap it up, my friends. I love you guys. Thank you for the live today. I so appreciate it. Thank you for being here. If you're joining us from one of the other socials, YouTube or Instagram, I so appreciate you being here. Please consider coming over to Zenocracy.news, Zenocracy. The link is in my profile, and subscribe. That's our Substack. That's our home base. if you're happy where you are, there's nothing wrong with that. Please continue to join us from that space. There's just there's a bit more coverage you're going to have access to here at Xenocracy.news, and also. It's a place where I'm really trying to build the subscriber base. My free subscribers are incredible. If you are comfortable and you want to support my work even further, the work to help fix democracy, help save democracy, if you want to support my own little corner of the internet, please consider a paid subscription as well. Thank you guys for being here 1 minute at a time, 1 hour at a time, 1 day at a time, 1 live at a time. I'm going to take the dog for a quick walk now before my daily briefing with Chorus today, and she knows. Here she she knows. Pixie knows we're going for a walk. I have my daily briefing at 12:30, and then we'll be. And guys, I have to apologize too. I did mention that I was having a interview today. Unfortunately, it did not work out. I was supposed to be interviewing who I originally, first I thought it was someone from a former Biden Assistant Secretary of Defense. Turns out a gentleman's name is Chris Meagher. He was a deputy press secretary for the secretary, a deputy press person for the Secretary of Defense during the Biden administration, became a deputy press secretary in the administration. I was expecting a 10:30 call, but I think the folks that were coordinating the call may have mixed up the timing. So I'm really hoping, this is the second time that Chris and I missed each other. So I'm really, really hoping I can get him on later in the week or next week. So my apologies to you guys as well, because I did promise an interview and I didn't deliver for that today. So I do apologize. I try my best not to screw those things up. Anyway, much love to you guys. Let me just pull the streaming window out of here, if I can get to it. Okay, Instagram, we're going to wrap you guys first, and then we will wrap Substack and YouTube. Thank you guys. Actually, I can see all your... Take care, Lacey. Take care,